Atheist Nomads, episode 222, Birth Control, Abortion, and Religion with Two Pregnant Women.
The podcast you're about to listen to includes cursing and talking about hoo-haws. Please be advised.
Welcome to the episode of Atheist Nomads. I am Dustin. Joining me is Lauren.
Hello!
And we are joined by Mary Cole again.
Hello.
Welcome back, Mary.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah!
So, how are you guys doing?
Good.
Not good. No,
Okay.
I'm totally going to be honest. No, I'm at 34 weeks. I'm exhausted, and everything hurts. I've got arthritis in my fingers, so that sucks. I can't grip stuff anymore.
Yeah. You fell.
Much to Dustin's dismay. And I did fall. Not hurting the baby at all, but we didn't feel her movement as much afterwards, so we went in for kind of a little emergency fetal monitoring and found out that she wasn't kicking because she was too busy sucking on her toes, which is adorable. So
even the hospitalists thought it was adorable.
She played us good.
Yeah.
That's going to be a nice little $2,000 reminder of how cute she is.
It's not going to cost us that much.
No, it's not. I'm joking.
We've met our first deductible for the year, so that should all be covered. Yeah. Then in a week, we start on a new deductible with new insurance.
Yeah.
Better insurance that covers things more, but still starting over.
Starting over the deductible. So yeah, it's been rough, but only a few more weeks.
Yeah, you're in the countdown now.
Seriously.
You're weeks ahead of me. So I just got into third trimester, which is when everyone says things slowly start to get uncomfortable. I definitely do feel it more than I did a couple weeks ago. Back hurts.
Yeah,
heartburn all the time, but I feel pretty good.
I mean, I was expecting third trimester to get uncomfortable. I didn't know about just the actual pain, the straight up pain of in my hands, in my hips. My feet have swollen up. I finally had to go get some what I'm calling them is pregnancy shoes. They're clogs. So you just slide your feet in. You don't have to bend over and do anything to them. So I clog around in my new pregnancy shoes.
I am going to get slip-on shoes after this podcast. That was my plan.
Shoe stores.
Yeah, that I'm going to go find some shoes because I can't. My belly's getting to the point where I can't tie my own shoes.
You can't tie shoes.
Over.
You can't even grab the heel and pull it up to get your heel into the shoe. So yeah,
and my feet are getting wider. So I'm getting that is what I'm doing after this. Is I'm going to go get some pregnancy shoes.
You're 29 weeks along.
I am. Yep.
Between 29 and 34, I think Lauren's belly doubled in size.
That's how I'm feeling right now. Every day it's bigger, and I think, how can it get any bigger? And then the next day it's bigger. But I was reading, she's supposed to put on a half a pound this week, in a week.
Yeah.
It took 20 weeks to get her to 1 pound, and then in 1 week she put on half a pound. So I'm
I know my baby's gonna be a fatty.
It's crazy,
especially with all that mac and cheese I've been eating.
Well, no, actually, she's based on her current weight. She's going to be slightly above average.
But I'll be proud of a fat baby. They're allowed to have chunky thighs when they're
fat babies
that
are
young.
The best. Fat babies are the best. No reason for a baby to be skinny.
No.
Yeah.
Little chubby babies are the cutest ones anyway.
They have little fat rolls like pugs.
Yeah.
Call her my little pug.
Oh, man. All right, let's go ahead and move on to dusting off the degree. For today's topic, and this was originally scheduled for last week, which we then replaced with what was originally a 50-minute long apology. But so it went ahead and moved it along. Mary was also supposed to be with us for last week, and we bumped back a week. So you still get the same topic.
Yeah. I signed up for this one specifically, so I'm glad that it got moved.
Yes, awesome. I was kind of hoping that was the case. Contraceptives and abortion with religion is a interesting topic because it's basically 30 years old. It's not much older of a issue than we are as people, which is crazy. It's impossible for us to really grasp our minds around that. I know when I learned this, it was absolutely shocking. But if you look at the Catholic Church, they are the ones that contraceptives and abortion have always been taboo. 100% absolutely always. And the reason for them is because of their their hierarchy of is sex okay or not. Well, actually, sex is never okay for Catholics. It's in the hierarchy of how sinful it is. The least sinful form of sex is sex with the intent of conceiving. If it's procreative, it is almost okay.
Just a little bit.
So anything that makes it so that there isn't a chance of conception or a very, very low chance of conception, because realistically, all contraceptives are not completely effective. They are the good ones are 99 or to 99.9% effective. So there's still always that chance, but it's a very, very low chance. Well, for Catholics, if there's not a good chance, then it is really sinful. And they base it on a little bit on the Bible, and that part of the Bible they're pulling that from is Judah's son, who had to marry his sister-in-law when his brother died, and he didn't want to make a baby that would be counted as his brother's child, so he kept pulling out and coming on the floor. And God struck him dead.
Well, I certainly hope he cleaned up after himself.
He did it like 2 or 3 times and then got struck down dead by God.
Oh, okay.
So obviously that's bad. That's also ends up being the argument that some Christians will use to say that masturbation is bad because you are spilling seed and that is not good. That is all bullshit and ridiculous and crazy.
Yeah, I mean, what if he got struck down for something completely unrelated? Like he was a total dick to the mailman.
Well, even in the story, the problem isn't that he was trying to prevent conception. The problem was that he had a duty, according to their customs and religion, to produce a child in honor of and memory of his brother. And he was not keeping his end of that bargain.
So some kind of sick sibling rivalry?
And yet he was still having sex with his sister-in-law. Just wasn't willing to have sex with her for the reason he was supposed to.
Do you think, like culturally for that time period, it really almost makes sense to have some sort of cultural rule about making sure that you come inside of a woman? Because how hard was it to keep people alive back then? Yeah. Like if you wanted your people and your group and your tribe or whatever to stay alive, you have to procreate a lot more, you know, as a survival, like it was about survival.
Right.
It's not really.
Yeah, your tribe is going to go extinct
anymore
if you stop having kids.
Right. So you can see, like, yeah, procreate or have as much procreating sex as you as you can so that we don't die out as a people makes a lot of sense thousands of years ago. Now it's like we're doing okay, like as a species.
We got the population numbers.
Yeah, maybe that's not a rule anymore.
The need for that stopped at about the time that we developed antibiotics. Once we developed antibiotics and vaccines, death rates plummeted. And that's only a little over 100 years time span. Amazingly.
Out of thousands and thousands and thousands.
Yeah. So your options before that for contraceptives, with the exception of the possibility of that the Greeks might have had a plant-based birth control that they used to extinction, is your options were sheep intestine condoms.
Which you can still get.
Yep. Or you pull out. That was it. And abortions are a thing that have happened throughout pretty much all of recorded history. In the 1800s, it wasn't uncommon. Well, everyone who worked in a whorehouse knew how to perform an abortion. It was ugly. It wasn't all that safe, but it was available. And even in the early Christian period, there was a Gnostic sect that if someone got pregnant in the group, they would abort and then grind up the fetus and they would all eat it. Because
that makes placenta eaters kind of tame.
Oh yeah, because they believed that creating matter was evil because matter was evil. So if you created new matter by creating a new human being, you had just increased the evilness in the world. So they wanted to avoid that. And they had it all completely ritualistic in how they did it. But it's been around for a long, long time. And nobody cared because it wasn't common. and it wasn't a religious issue. If you look at historically, Christians have believed that life begins at the moment you take your first breath. And that is based on the Bible. Anyway, yeah, it comes from the Bible. I don't remember the exact verse. Then in the early 20th century, there started becoming abortion bans that started getting passed in more and more states. It wasn't a religious thing. It was just a thing that some people were uncomfortable with. And by the time Roe versus Wade was decided in the Supreme Court, it was about half of states that prohibited abortion, about half allowed it. And that ruling made it legal across the entire country. By that time, contraceptives were also widely available. In the early days of birth control, it was illegal in most states. It wasn't a religious issue. It was, these are weird and it's going to make women more likely to have sex, and that is bad. It was a sexist issue. I
think when stuff I've read on this is that it was right after the Civil War that it really started to become an issue for people. Abortion did. Mm-hmm. And part of it had to do with the fact that so that the slaves got freed. Now they suddenly had these rights, and it sort of inspired this mini suffrage movement before the big one that gave us the right to vote. And basically women wanted to vote. They wanted to go out and start working. They wanted to get more in that public sphere, less in that, less stay at home.
Well, they just lost most of their men, so they kind of had to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But it was more among like this, when this is happening, this is more among the upper class, like people with money.
Yeah.
So it had never been an issue until that point. And then all these women have started wanting to go out and do stuff. And what gets in the way of that is having babies. Right. So it became more common, or more talked about at least. And it was kind of a way to squash that women's rights, that mini women's rights movement that happened when these women were suddenly looking around and seeing that these black people had these rights. And they're like, wait, we want them then, you know?
Yeah.
Since we were raised to believe we were better than them, which obviously was wrong. It goes without saying. But then all of a sudden they had these rights that women didn't have, and it kind of inspired this little movement.
Right.
And abortion becoming something that was illegal, or at least started being condemned, was a good way to squash that, because then you got to have the baby, right?
Yeah. Right. And of course, you also would have had people objecting to it in terms of, we need more people, because Civil War, there was a lot of people died. You had the westward expansion, so you needed a larger population to hold more land. Then we had World War I and World War II. The concerns around it were there. They weren't religious in nature. With Roe versus Wade, the argument was not religious, because the religious discussion was, that's a Catholic issue. It's
and
not
nobody liked the Catholics anyway.
Right. It wasn't a Protestant issue.
Yeah.
That's all happened since then. It's amazing, even if you look at the official stances of a wide variety of denominations, and just for a couple examples, United Methodist Church officially has no position on abortion. Officially they have no position, but a little bit more than that is they think that it is something you should probably not do unless you really need to. But they leave it up to every member to decide what they're going to do.
Which is a totally fine position to take. Right. Yeah. That's how I think most reasonable people feel about it.
Yeah.
You can be against abortion and still be like, but that's not my, it's a decision you need to make for you.
Yeah.
That's a fine stance, in my opinion.
The Adventist Church didn't formalize their position until the mid-90s, and their position on it is that it shouldn't be used for routine birth control. Obviously, there are better forms of routine birth control than abortion, but that it should be, that it's ultimately up to each person's choice as to what they're going to do. It's a beautiful position to have on it. My mom, while in the Adventist Church, which she still is, when she was pregnant with me, she hid it through the entire first trimester from everybody, because everybody, including the local Adventist church, would have told her to get an abortion because of the medical risk. And she hid it from everyone because at that time, it still wasn't a religious issue. It's so weird that it's changed.
Yeah.
It was about the Christian, right? And the traditional gender roles is what it comes down to. Is it's a lot easier to keep those gender roles if the woman has a bunch of kids. Like, it just makes it easier to control women.
Yeah.
You know, if you have the money and then you have a bunch of kids, the man makes the money and the woman's home. You know, it's a lot easier to control.
Yeah.
Control women
there's
that
still
way.
Lots of people who claim that that's not the issue at hand. That's not why they're pro-life. Like, yeah, but you see that you are a pawn in this game, right? That you are kind of being played by the sexist overlords.
And here's my biggest problem with the pro-life movement. Most people who are pro-life say they're pro-life, and maybe not most. I would say most pro-life people I've met say that they are pro-life, anti-abortion, except for in situations where it's a health risk to the mother or rape or incest, right? Like, that's kind of a generally accepted thing amongst most there's a really extreme group that just says no across the board, even if it will kill the mother. But that group of people that says, except for in the case of the health of the mother, or rape or incest, they're my biggest problem, because you wouldn't go and kill a toddler that was the result of rape or incest, right? But you're okay with an abortion. So you're already admitting that fetus has fewer rights and less autonomy than a living, like, born person. Like, it's almost an admission that it is more about the control over the woman's body than it is about the life inside of it, because you'll allow for certain exceptions, which you wouldn't do with a human life outside of the womb. You would not allow for any exception.
Well, yeah, nobody cares about the life once it's outside of the womb anyway.
Well, right. And the way they switched everybody's thinking on it is, you're obviously opposed to murdering babies. The number of people who think it is okay to murder a baby is, I think, for the ones that aren't actually just joking about it, is insanely small. That is out there, is incredibly, incredibly rare, and everybody universally agrees that is ridiculous. In our present time and era, that hasn't universally been the case.
Right.
There have been times when it was considered killing babies was okay if it was between that or your older children starving. You let the babies die. Inuit peoples are the ones most famous for that, where if they had a bad harvest or bad hunting year, they would leave the infants on the ice to die to make sure there was enough food for the rest of the tribe. So even considering that is a relatively new concept, but moving it to life begins at conception is an incredibly new idea, decades old. And I think whoever first had that idea had the idea with the deceitful intent of using it to control women and to subjugate women, and then convinced a bunch of honestly decent people that life begins at conception. And if you're aborting fetuses, you're killing babies.
Yeah. Well, that's always the I've always had the easy time with this argument, like in high school and stuff. We had a lot of fights between the Mormons and the Catholics. Sometimes fist fights, even one claiming that the other isn't Christian. It's a good old fight. And one of the things that kept coming up was abortion. And you just have to break it down. It's like, when do you believe life begins? And anybody who says conception, I'm like, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but there's this woman's choice that overrides it. And then I ask another person, and they're like, well, I don't, when do you think life starts? And they're like, when the baby's born. It's like, okay, so all you have to do is look across the table here and see that definition is what you're fighting over, not anything else. It's just, when does life start? So argue that point. Don't argue anything else. about killing babies or whatnot. Don't be throwing that stuff in there because you're just fueling a fire that doesn't need to be fought.
Right. Well, and if
you think life starts at conception, well, give your reasons. You know, why do you think life begins at conception? And if it's a divinity thing, then you're not going to reach everybody with that message. So you're going to have to accept that other people are going to not agree with you.
Well, and with it as a religious thing, it's life begins at conception because the zygote gets a soul. Where it used to be you got your soul when you were born with your first breath. That's when you get your soul. It's the whole ridiculous religious concept of an immaterial soul is what's at play.
Ensoulment.
And
is that what it's called?
Yeah. That is the proper theological term. And it is absurd. When you look at people who aren't religious and how they view the issue, it's a gray area of when life begins because there's not a clear-cut answer.
Which is why people argue for fetal heartbeat. Some people argue for lung development. You know, as soon as a baby or a fetus is capable of being out of the womb on its own, then that's life. So you have to figure out your vocabulary and what you're actually arguing for.
It is really gray. I mean, I feel like as somebody who right now is like having a person developing inside of me, I definitely feel like it's not that there's a point where I was like, okay, now she's a person. It's that she's like sort of becoming more of a person as time goes on. By. And, you know, when I was first pregnant, even though I've been trying to get pregnant, I was suddenly like a little freaked out about it. I was like, I don't know if I really want to. And because she didn't feel like it wasn't a person yet. You know, it was just, no, it was just like
there's still
person potential. It was a little more permanent, but it was like just person. But like, you know, she gets bigger and I can feel her more. She feels more like a person to me, but it's not, I don't think you can say like, this is when,
well,
I think that's why conception
immediately feel a connection. I'm at 34 weeks and I'm just like, I still don't believe this is real.
I get the same way. It feels really abstract to me. And sometimes it feels really real and like I feel connected. Most of the time it feels really abstract. Like I know I'm pregnant, but it doesn't affect my day-to-day that much.
Until I'm holding that thing, it's not going to click for me.
But abstract and gray areas that's hard for religious people. They don't know how to deal with gray areas. And so I think conception's a really hard line. They can draw that line and be like, that is where once it becomes the woman's responsibility, that's where it becomes life. You know, it's a lot harder to say, well, somewhere in this area, then they're a human.
Yeah.
It's really easy to say at conception because then you never have to think about how much more complicated it is ever again.
Because most people who are pro-choice are not in favor of aborting a 37-week fetus.
Right.
No, they are not.
No.
That's killing a baby.
These kids who go down to college campuses and promote their pro-life stuff with giant pictures of aborted fetuses. It's like, no, this isn't.
Nobody advocates for that. And
nobody wants that to happen. That's traumatic.
The only
terrible.
case where that's happening, fetal heartbeat is failing already, and you're just ending. Well, you're delivering a failing fetus at that point. That's called stillbirth. That it's traumatic. It is terrible. It's horrible when it happens. It's also medical, and it needs to just be viewed as medical and a tragedy.
As it's something like 3% of abortions happen after 25 weeks, like 3%, and almost all, like 99.9% of those. That's not a real statistic. Don't quote me on that, but it's like a huge number of those. It's always for medical reasons. Like people aren't. When you decide that you don't want to be pregnant, you're not waiting around. You don't deal with it. You don't wait. You don't take that long to figure it out. People who know they don't want to carry a baby full term we figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It's not something that's happening.
You don't go all the way through the first trimester.
And you don't. Yeah. Because why would you?
Yeah.
Why would you like put that off?
All that energy and all of that. Yeah. Emotional. Nobody wants abortion.
So people who are having these late-term abortions are doing something that is difficult, and they're doing it in spite of the fact that this was a pregnancy and a baby that they wanted for almost exclusively. That's the case.
Even if
and for whatever
retroactively
reason,
wanted.
Yeah. Even if they decided later, but
yeah,
it's because that the baby isn't compatible with life for this reason or that reason, or it's unsafe, or it's
exactly.
Not,
if there's a medical reason to terminate, there is a good reason. It is you don't want to give birth to a child who's going to suffer
and die.
And what a horrible thing
I mean, it's just nobody wishes this on anybody, and it makes me want to cry.
I know, and what a horrible thing to exploit the pain that the parents are going to have to go through, to be somebody who would exploit that pain to try and scare women who are in their first trimester out of having an abortion when it's a pregnancy that they don't want, because they are not the same thing.
No,
they're different, and
it's
I don't know.
To me, it's one of those where it's to use the cliche. I don't remember which justice, but Supreme Court decision on it's. I know porn when I see it. With life, it's one of those where you kind of it's life when you see it, and a clump of cells at the beginning that might look kind of frog-like. That's the exciting potential of life if it's wanted, and it's a clump of cells that looks slightly frog-like if it's not wanted.
Yeah.
That is not the same thing at all from a baby about to be born. Those are two completely different things. And where that line is, the safest place to draw it is at the point when it is actually viable outside of the womb. But even then, if you go with a hard stance against abortion at that point even, then you're limiting options when there is something seriously wrong. Like, there's no brain. A fetus will continue to develop even if there are serious neurotube defects, even though it would never survive outside of the womb. And having the option, when that's discovered, to end a pregnancy that is not going to end in the birth of a viable child, that's something that needs to be available.
Well, it still comes down to that choice, too. You can be in the worst situation, get pregnant, everybody's going to tell you that you need to abort, that you need to get rid of it, either for medical or economic. And when it comes right down to it, it's still the girl's choice, still the woman's choice. She can still say, no, I'm going to go ahead, and this is more important to me than my own life, or this is more important to me than what my family says. And that needs support too. Otherwise, you're being kind of hypocritical when you're telling a woman that she can't have children. I mean, don't even try that. There's dystopian sci-fi is all about that. But there's just this whole equal respect across the table thing that is missing. And I think that most people, like a good 2/3 of people, at least in America, in the United States, can probably agree on a typical pro-choice agenda. But those extremists on either side are ruining it for everyone, because those are the ones that the legislators are listening to. And I don't know if it's because they have money or because they're fanatic, but they're ruining it for everyone.
Yeah.
I always do.
And one of the things I had to point out when I was in college and they had one of those big abortion poster things is that in one of the pictures, I'm like, can you tell that that's human? But she's like, of course it's human. I'm like, that could be a pig, you know? They look the same at that age.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't bother sitting there on my phone and showing her what fetuses look like as they develop, but there's a certain point where it doesn't look human. And
well, embryonic stages, it doesn't really look human.
No.
It's once you get to fetus, it's definitely human. But embryo, not necessarily.
There was this picture, and I'm just like, you can't tell what the hell that is. That could somebody's exploiting you.
Oh, that would be funny if it was a pig embryo.
I can see somebody doing that, selling a pig embryo picture to a whole bunch of fanatics.
Ah, man. Yeah.
They were downtown at the farmer's market
Really?
yesterday. Yeah, with the big posters.
Boo.
Robert and I had just gone and got brunch, and he was like, we were crossing the street to where they were standing to get to our car, and he's like, please don't talk to me. Please don't talk to me. And I was like my jacket off, my belly out. I'm like, talk to me. Like, do you want to debate this with a pregnant woman? Because I will talk to you right now. But Robert steered us off. So I was like, all right, fine.
I was like, God, I wish I had a bag full of condoms.
Well, you had the at Oktoberfest in Idaho Falls. They wanted to... Birthright wanted to give you something.
Yeah. Well, no, they wanted to give my dad something.
Oh.
So it was me, clearly pregnant, standing right next to my father, and she goes straight to my dad and says, "Are you, we're raising money for this charity, air quotes, Birthright. They're the ones that they promote free pregnancy screenings, and then once you get, if you're positive, then they heavily like inundate you with adoption or a pro-life propaganda." And Dad's like, he holds this piece of paper, he's like, "I think you're talking to the wrong person." And he like hands it to me, and I'm like, "Yeah, no, this is terrible." So much nope.
Yeah, well, I was on the other side of the field with a 1 liter mug full of beer.
Memories.
Anyway, let's go ahead and take a break, and we've got some news.
All right.
Atheist Nomads is proudly brought to you by Archway Hosting. Check out their low-price, full-featured hosting solutions at archwayhosting.com. That's ARCHWAY hosting.com. We're also brought to you by listeners just like you. You can find out more at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Atheist Nomads. Donald Trump was recently joking about Mike Pence liking to say that he wants to hang all gay people.
Yeah, we know he thinks that way.
This is such a Donald Trump thing to do, too.
Right,
I feel like he
is.
spends so much time managing his image. Like, he wants to be a champion of the conservatives, but he also, doesn't want to be seen as like a Mike Pence conservative.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, just be a decent person and stop trying to manage people's expectations of you. But that's just what it seemed like to me. Like, he was just trying to control his image a little bit.
Well, to me,
I'm bad, but I'm not as bad as this
I'm not
guy.
as bad. Yeah, you guys might hate
Who's
me,
my
but
running mate.
yeah, he
exactly
picked Mike Pence. So if Mike Pence is bad, that is a direct reflection on Donald Trump.
Yeah, I know. That's why he's trying to save face, I guess. I would joke about Mike Pence that way too, because it's true. The guy's a terrible person. So let's make fun of the fact that he's a terrible person and maybe make him own up to it once in a while. But you don't do it when you choose the guy to be your freaking running mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of like the unspoken thing in politics is that you support your people.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll support you.
And yeah.
Especially after you just went to a freaking Christian values anti-LGBT rally.
Yeah. Yeah, who are you to talk, Donald?
God damn it, dude.
We're like the keynote speaker at that stupid thing, and you're going to criticize Pence for his stance?
Yeah.
Granted, if Pence actually does want to hang all gay people, that is demonstrably worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
But still, both are bad. It's like which is worse, a fascist or a Nazi?
I think
they're both
the
bad.
The best I've seen in response to that is the joke about Pence just enjoying autoerotic asphyxiation. But,
man. No, I'm just waiting for when Pence gets caught in some gay orgy. It's gonna happen one of these days.
I can imagine people
super repressed.
People like trying to like trick him into it. I can just I don't know. I just like a honeypot thing or something. Like, people are constantly like harassing Pence to try and sleep with men. It's like, come on.
I'm definitely thinking more Ted Haggard than Larry Craig. That it would be like snorting coke off of a gay prostitute's ass rather than tapping his foot in a men's room.
I think he's a party guy.
They all are.
Almost like when stuff like the Craig thing came out, like you almost feel bad for the guy, like that he had to live that like such a homophobic, like staunchly against gay rights life. Mm-hmm. and is so against like what he really wanted in his own life, almost makes you feel a little bad for him. Like,
I think you reach a level of and maybe it's just because I think politicians are sociopaths, but where they don't care where they get it. They just, if they want to have sex, they're going to get it no matter what the consequences. Even though they stand by certain values, to them it's just a fuck. So,
I think it's simpler than that. It's the ones who think it's evil and need to publicly say that it's evil, but want it more than anything else in the world, have to fight twice as hard to keep from getting found out. And they've all been doing it for so long that we all know they're all just closet cases, seriously conflicted closet cases.
It's a safe assumption.
Yeah.
And even if that's not true, making that assumption drives them crazy.
Yeah.
So,
so it works out for us on either end.
Still a good laugh.
You just, every time you hear somebody come out and say something super homophobic, politician-wise, you're like, well, start the countdown.
That's why
next 3 to 5 years, they'll get caught in some sort of...
Every Republican who comes out and doesn't defend women in any kind of like rape situation, the thing that pops up in my head is like, you're a rapist. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to validate what you've done in your past.
Well,
that's got to be the only reason why you would think that.
Well, you look at sex scandals for politicians. Democrats, it tends to be the scandal was that he had consensual sex with somebody other than his wife of the opposite sex. So, straight man having an affair with a straight woman. With Republicans, it's either with a man or it wasn't consensual. It seems to rarely ever be a straight consensual affair. Yeah, it happens occasionally, but that's not the stereotypical Republican sex scandal.
Well, do you think that has something to do with when you're conservative, you are a lot more tied to Christianity. That's just how it always is. And this idea amongst most Christians that sex outside of like this one little scenario, which is in marriage, is a sin. So anything sexual outside that is just as bad as any other kind of, you know what I mean? Like a rape is just as bad as an affair, is just as bad as so they don't really necessarily see the lines between those things. That's all just as bad as murdering a prostitute after you're done with her. Yeah. Yeah. It's all just as bad. Yeah.
It's all like just to think about.
Yeah.
Move it down. But that's always been my thought on it, is that if you've got really strict rules about your sexuality, then everything outside of that's going to seem equally bad, which is not with
Mike Pence, he won't have dinner with a woman alone, or preferably he won't have dinner with a woman unless his mommy, yes, he calls his wife mommy, is present.
Gross. So that's
not calling your wife baby. I know it's just a cutesy thing, but that's still creepy.
No, it's a creepy thing.
So is the thought process on this like, so he's thinking, I will definitely cross a sexual line here if there's no one else around, like other people around is the thing stopping him from being inappropriate? Is that the
or is it
the
a public
mindset?
face thing where he's just trying to convince people that no, he really is super wholesome and
well, either way, that's not, it's not a good, like, I want to live in a world where like we have to be chaperoned with men so that those men can seem holier. Like that seems like a bad.
I know the eyes rolling in the back of my head are just hurting. But no, I don't know. It is weird because everybody's mentioned how weird that is. What a weird response that was. Mm-hmm. So it's not like it's just the super conservatives. Even the super conservatives are like, what?
Well, let's see. When I turned 18, my mom advised me to never be alone with a girl under 18. Oregon has very, very strict laws, and even the slightest accusation can easily get you convicted of a felony. So that was her advice, just to avoid any risk of anything possibly ever happening or being said.
Which makes sense for 18-year-old boy.
Yeah.
You know, that I can totally understand that.
But it's different when you're talking about a 60-year-old man.
Yeah.
And it's not just alone. From my understanding, it's not just being alone, like being alone in a basement with a woman for him. It's like going to dinner in a public place with just a woman, even if it's in a professional context, he will bring somebody with him. So they're not, I mean.
Yeah. It's like, what? Are you
they're not really the same.
Out and just like go on a rape rampage?
So Mike Pence,
you don't have a handler?
Can't be alone in a room with the White House press secretary.
No.
If the vice president and the press secretary cannot be in the same room, you have a serious problem. Or we can't be in the same room alone.
Yeah. Well,
there's a problem there.
Just use taxpayer dollars to hire somebody to follow him around all the time so that he doesn't have to be alone with a woman.
Like a handler.
Yeah.
Or the Secret Service. They're already with him at all times.
That's already a thing, isn't it? I guess he's not going to be alone with much of anybody these days.
Yeah.
It's still a really weird...
it was just a weird thing for him to say.
So there's a lawsuit against a bar called the Happiest Hour that claims that...
Happy Hour, got it.
They violated a man's liberty that needs to be treated the same as religious liberty. This was right after the inauguration. He was wearing a Make America Great Again hat.
This guy.
And even though he tipped them like 28% and racked up a $150 tab, when they threw him out, they violated his freedom.
Why did they throw him out?
The bar isn't saying because it's an ongoing lawsuit against them.
But he claims that it's because of his Make America Great Again hat. And that
there were a lot of people who were really angry, who I think did probably overreact. This could be one of those cases. But the point of the lawsuit is that he's trying to claim his political views is the same as religious or spiritual views. And those are not the same. They are protected, though.
Not in the same way.
But not in the same way.
But even more important is he was there long enough to leave a substantial tip, and so apparently got good service, and was there long enough to rack up a sizable tab, which he did pay.
I wonder if he became really belligerent over time.
If you drink $130 worth of booze at a place called the Happiest Hour, which I assume would be fairly inexpensive to drink at, you might have gotten belligerent there at the end, would be my guess. And that's...
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was America. What are you going to do?
Even if all he did was wear the hat and they kicked him out for wearing the hat, or they kicked him out for his beliefs, the thing that I think is funny about this story is that the same people who are like, yeah, you should sue that bar for not letting you be a patron there, are the same people who are like, hey, you can't sue that bakery for not baking a cake for gay people.
Yeah.
It's all,
Oh, yeah.
And I guess I would say the same thing. I'm like, but the other direction, we all want our rights or our beliefs and rights protected a little bit more than other people's. But
Indiana county. This one kind of Mike Pence related, but he's not governor of Indiana anymore.
That state, though, man, they've been all over the.
Indiana owes all of us an apology for. Yeah. And great gratitude. This county had a vote of their county commission to suspend their needle exchange program. One of the commissioners who voted against the program, continuing it, even quoted the Bible, specifically 2 Chronicles chapter 7, where it says, if I shut up heaven that there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, if my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will be forgiven their sin and will heal their land.
So he's saying anybody who commits any sin just needs to pray it away. So there's no reason for any kind of social...
So why do we do anything?
Welfare net?
Why do anything if you're just going to quote that scripture? Why do anything that progressive? And also, even if that's what you believe, then wouldn't you be for the needle program? Because you'd be like, hey, let's try and keep these people alive and healthy long enough for them to turn to God if that's what you believe.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, why are we not trying to? It seems like the Christian thing to do, you know, in air quotes, Christian thing to do would be to provide these so that to reduce HIV and hepatitis, so that these people can stay alive long enough to seek treatment and turn their lives around. But it seems to be more about the principle for him. Like, out of principle, we can't give these lazy drug addicts free needles because then they'll just do more drugs. But disease doesn't stop addicts from doing drugs. Well, just let's keep them alive and healthy for just a little longer, and hopefully they can turn it around.
There's probably 1,000 quotes from the Bible that you could use to counter that argument.
Yeah.
If he can find one, I can find 10 others.
Indiana keeps on getting into the news about needle exchanges and the heroin epidemic because they have it really bad. You compare it to the rest of the country, and heroin is a big problem nationwide. Apparently, it's worse in Indiana, and this is Lawrence County, Indiana, where this vote just happened. This is apparently a new needle exchange program, and it has led to a 50% decrease in hepatitis C cases this year alone.
How is that not a good thing? How can anyone look at that and be like, no, we don't?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could kind of like see it as a two-prong attack where you're trying to you're trying to attack the cause of the disease outbreak, which is the drug use, or you're trying to combat the disease. Sometimes it seems like logically you'd want to take out the reason for it first. But in this case, where the hepatitis and HIV is so bad, you have to get that under control first before you can address the drug use. There's no problems whatsoever with doing it at the same time, but most places don't have the money to do that.
Right. So
it's like what city in California has the huge hepatitis A outbreak? LA, where they're literally bleaching the streets to try and prevent the disease from spreading.
Oh wow. Well,
yeah.
Hepatitis A is transmitted by fecal matter.
Yeah. So they're literally trying to just get that under control before they can focus on the drug use, which is the cause of this problem. I think it's hepatitis A.
Hepatitis A is not spread by drug use.
No, it was. I don't remember the details.
That's specifically C.
The internet people know what I'm talking about.
Okay. You mean listeners? Listeners, you all live in the internet.
The internet.
So you know.
Yeah, the little people who run around in the internet leaving messages for each other.
Gnomes.
They also said in this that where they're doing these needle exchanges, they've had a lot of contacts with people being able to get them the help and information they need for rehab too. So it's actually helping people get clean and sober on top of cutting down on.
Yeah, it's not like they leave buckets of needles laying around. You have to go to a person to get a clean needle, and they're going to try and convince you to go to rehab or something. If I were a drug user, I'd actually find it very annoying. It's like, stop hassling me, man. I just want to get high. But from a person who thinks drugs are bad in general, that's how it works.
Yeah.
You have to give them the opportunity, otherwise they've got nowhere to go.
And the risk of contracting a disease is not going to stop anybody from using drugs, or else nobody would use drugs that involved a needle. And I think that's part of it, is that they're like, well, we're just creating incentive for them to use drugs. No, they're going to use them one way or the other. Let's create a safe environment for that use, and then hopefully get them the information and the help that they need in the process, and make the world a better place.
It simply comes down to harm reduction. So many people in our country don't accept that as a goal, that no, you must eliminate harm. Okay, eliminating harm is incredibly difficult. Reducing harm is easy, relatively easy. And if you accumulate enough harm reduction programs and methods and approaches, you improve public health drastically. If you can reduce the hepatitis C infection rate by 50% in a year, that is huge. That is an amazing success.
And for people who are not humanists who are obsessed with money, that saves the state a lot of money too. So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
I think there also needs to be, we could prevent people from getting rid of these kinds of programs if we were better at educating that drug use is not a morality issue. Like drug addiction is not, you are not giving people the ability to be less moral by giving them clean needles. It's not a morality issue. It's a health issue. It's a addiction issue, but it's not, you're not an immoral person for having a drug problem.
Right.
Where I think it is seen in our society so much as one. And I think this guy, that's probably what he thinks. Well, why are we giving this to these immoral people who are doing this bad thing? Instead of looking at it as these are people who are struggling and need help. There are the people who got into it recreationally. But when it comes to heroin specifically, it's veterans who got cut off of their pain meds. It's people in car accidents who got cut off from their pain meds. It's people who've had surgery and got cut off from their pain meds. And people with chronic pain who were freely given prescriptions to pain meds and they didn't really need them. That's where this outbreak is coming from, where this crisis is coming from, is legal prescriptions and people who got started legally. And you get heroin for cheaper, easier to get your hands on it. It's cheaper and it's the same basic drug. Mm-hmm. And addictions, it's tough, man. It's like,
it just leads to all the social problems. Mm-hmm. All the problems. So many. How do you treat PTSD for vets? Keep them from being homeless? People with mental health issues. How come they don't have the resources that they need? Non-drug interventions. Man. Yeah, this is one of those like wormhole topics where it really is so connected to so many different issues. It's a vortex, man. It's our healthcare system's part of the problem. Oh my gosh.
Our, like you said, the veterans, the way that we treat our veterans is education. Continuing this idea that addiction's a morality issue, that's part of the problem. And criminalizing something that is not a morality issue just perpetuates it.
We can talk about it. We can't fix these kind of problems on our own. But there are baby steps, and undoing those baby steps is just a dick move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Needle exchange programs is a really small way to start changing people's thinking about it and to start helping people have these problems. Decriminalizing drug use would be a huge help.
And needle exchanges, as far as cost, we're talking literally less than a penny a needle. And this would be for syringes and needles that are safety style. You use it, you cap it. There's no risk of a accidental needle stick. It's safe, easy, and insanely cheap. And even if people are using them daily or several times a day, if you spend 5 cents a day on someone over the course of a year, you're a couple dollars in. And if you just kept that person from getting hepatitis C, the savings in Medicaid alone is huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so the math is there. All right. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled in American Humanists' favor that a big cross on public land in Maryland is unconstitutional. The cross in question was raised in the 1920s as a memorial to honor fallen soldiers from the First World War.
That's a sensitive, sticky topic.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if it's older than 1900, I can see people arguing. If it is representing any kind of veteran or war, you're going to have people arguing. It's a very recent, I think, idea that people can stand up and say, the cross doesn't really represent everybody who died.
Yeah. By the looks of the picture of it in this press release, it's taller than the flagpole that is next to it. It is compared to a car driving by, I would guess, and that's an SUV, it's probably 80 feet tall.
Oh my gosh.
And looks like it's right in the middle of an intersection. It's big.
That's huge. Well, break it down and put something else up.
Yeah, was there an alternative suggestion to say an article? I don't think they did. Like, let's take the cross down and do this. They're just saying, let's take the cross down.
This is on public land. It is a public veterans memorial. The cross doesn't belong there. If they took the cross off, the main part of the memorial would still be there. Heck, okay, a good way to do a veterans memorial with that, cut the cross off, because there's already, it looks like a 15-foot concrete base that has text on it.
Oh, okay. It's not just a huge giant cross.
No, it's sitting on top of a base with more stuff. Take the cross off, put a 100-foot flagpole there with a massive flag. So
like
move
that.
the flag that's next to it on the side, put the flag in the middle. Call it good.
Yeah, I like it.
Won't that be a lightning rod?
Ground it appropriately.
Okay. Just saying.
Yeah, you want to ground that shit.
We work out the details.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we replaced
that
the
is
cross,
a
and
good
now
idea.
it gets hit by lightning every 3 months, so I think God's angry at us.
Well, the flagpole is already there and would already be a lightning
The
rod.
flagpole sitta. Song reference.
Oh, sorry. There is a congressional candidate in Miami who is absolutely delightful. I mean, Bettina Rodriguez Aguilera is an amazing woman.
Would you marry her?
Wrong kind of amazing. She says that aliens took her on a spaceship when she was a child,
I love
and they
this
have been
story
continuing to speak to her telepathically ever since.
Oh my god, I totally forgot about this one.
I listened to this story about her on NPR yesterday too.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
I love this story so
You're
much.
right. You're right. She's amazing. We need more of these.
Yeah.
She'd actually probably do a better job in Congress than the people who are in there right now. So let's just give her a chance.
The thing,
Aliens might be really super wise people.
yeah.
It was 3 blonde, big-bodied beings, 2 female, 1 male, which if she was able to identify them based on that, I'd assume they had boobs.
Okay.
That or didn't wear clothes. But yeah, they visited her when she was 7. And yeah, several times they've continued communicating with her telepathically.
I tell you what I love so much about this story. I love this story so much. Okay, what I love about this is that they communicate with her telepathically. They give her information, and people are like, "We can't vote for this woman. She gets all this information telepathically," in air quotes, from these beings. And then what if she acts on it or she creates policy? And I'm like, oh, like 99% of the politicians in the United States right now. Now you know what it's like to be an atheist in this country.
Yes. Yeah.
like that's the guy who got rid of the needle program got rid of it because he communicated telepathically with a being that told him that he should get rid of it. Are you kidding?
I'd say give these guys a shot.
And her story sounds a little more believable to me, to be totally honest.
I have an easier time believing in aliens than God. Mm-hmm. So there is that. But she was 7. Obviously it was like some kind of mental thing. But
she's 59 now.
She's already been elected, right? I mean,
she's running.
She's running, right?
She's running. I say give her a shot.
She's running.
She's a Republican
she
running.
literally can't do worse.
Republican running to replace Ileana Ros-Leddington, who is also Republican. So Republican running in a Republican district in...
I think she should start a religion.
Heavily Cuban immigrant and descendant of Cuban American Miami.
Well, Miami
heavily Republican. Area. Yeah. Oh man, she is amazing.
That's fantastic.
I would love to find out. I should do the research, but I fear it'd be disappointing. But I would love if she had a platform on us increasing our space defense and our monitoring.
She's our first ambassador. Send her up.
Put more funding into SETI and space program to make sure we're ready for when the aliens come back.
Maybe they told her to run. Maybe they're looking at like what's going on and they're like, I think they're ready. I think the humans are ready to know about us. So there you go.
So then that sounds kind of like she is a alien agent.
Yeah.
And if you're an agent of an alien power,
that's
trying to influence U.S. politics. Oh, that's bad.
There's movies about that.
There's a lot of that going on. And maybe that's why they decided now's time. They're like, well, the president get away with it. Let's see if we can get a senator in there.
Yeah.
They can also get away with
They
it.
fell for Trump.
Oh, man. Make us a little bit not need to worry about Russia.
Yeah.
The aliens buying ad space on Facebook. And
I'd vote for him.
All right. It is time for feedback. From Randy Lamonda, this is your all-time best episode. Agree with Mikey as a straight white dude. Take the guns away from them for a year. This is in response to last week's episode. And from Acrovats on Twitter, nothing better than listening to @Atheist Nomads while walking by a pavilion of religious peeps at my university on my way to chemistry class. That makes me happy.
Very happy. New Zealand just elected a new prime minister, Jacinda Ardern, who is a self-proclaimed agnostic, ex-Mormon. I thought that was kind of funny.
No, so yeah, she left the LDS Church in her 20s because of their stance on LGBT rights.
which would have been like almost 15 years ago that she left, right? So that was pretty early for... I know a lot of people who have left the LDS Church recently because of it, like within the last few years, but 15 years ago, she would have been...
She's on the forefront.
Yeah, she was on the forefront of...
This is New Zealand. They are ahead of us. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if the New Zealand Mormons are, though. They might be.
And at 37, she will be, when she actually gets her government formed and
so young.
Takes over, she will be the world's youngest female leader.
I know.
That's
Here
awesome.
I am putzing around at 33 with nothing to show for it but a couple of puppies and a fetus.
You're 32.
Wait, how old? You're 33.
I'm 33.
32.
Yeah.
It's like when you watch Olympians. They're all like 14-year-olds. You're like, what have I done with my life? No, but this lady sounds like a badass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she sounds great.
Rocco, no.
What's interesting is this was a case of an election where it could have gone anywhere. They have a multi-party system with a mixed proportional vote, which is absolutely amazing. And the Labor and whatever their conservative party is, that might actually be called the Conservative Party, won the biggest blocks, but not enough to actually be able to form a government on their own. So they're having to do coalitions. And the New Zealand First Party is the one, apparently, that gets to be the kingmaker. And that's not a concept that we have in the U.S., but it is amazing. Yeah,
we should totally, when the shit goes down and we need to get out of the country, I think New Zealand should be top of our list.
Well, I have family there.
Exactly.
They have the royal tapestries from our family.
Quote unquote royal tapestries.
The family's royal tapestries are there, yes.
Everybody has a family tapestry hidden in New Zealand somewhere.
The royal candlesticks have fallen out of the family.
It's just, I know.
Yeah. Australia has removed most alternative medicine from allowable insurance subsidies.
Yay!
Good.
What was news to me with this is there's private insurance in Australia. It's not all single pay. It's not single payer. It is, most people are on government health care. There is employer provided insurance in addition to that. And the government subsidizes a huge amount of, like, I think all of the premiums and copays for the private insurance. And they are removing naturopathy, homeopathy, Alexander technique, aromatherapy, Bowen therapy, Buteyko, Feldenkrais, herbalism, and Western herbalism, homeopathy, iridology, kinesiology, massage, naturopathy, Pilates. Yes, Pilates have been covered by insurance in Australia. Reflexology, Rolfing, Shiatsu, Tai Chi, and yoga.
Who has insurance out there that covers massages? My insurance doesn't cover me having a baby, like, let alone a massage.
Actually, ours does cover a massage. What
does
is it?
it?
Like once a year, once a quarter or something?
Quarterly.
Yeah. So
Our current. We have new insurance starting
it's a perk,
on the 1st.
but I wouldn't call it health care.
No.
But there is more. There was more of that list that I didn't recognize than I did.
Yeah, there's a bunch on there that I didn't even know what they were.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Go home and look those up.
Just more crazy to come to the United States.
Yeah, what they didn't remove is chiropractic and a couple other... they didn't remove all alternative medicine.
Okay.
The 100% completely non-effective forms they did. So that's good.
Look, I've read a lot about a massage being fairly beneficial.
Yeah, I think like beneficial to your health versus health care.
Oh,
so is the line, like Pilates is good for you, right? Like it makes you a stronger, healthier person.
Tai Chi, that kind of thing.
Should it be covered by your health insurance?
But it's not targeting a disease or...
Yeah. I mean, I think like if your health insurance wants to cover a gym membership, that probably saves them money in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
If your healthcare wants to cover like certain kinds of exercise, it might save them money in the long run. But it's also not healthcare, so government subsidies should probably not cover that.
Yeah.
And the evidence on massage is that it is as effective as ibuprofen.
On like aches and pains, as far as like
back pain. A massage through proper studies is as effective as taking ibuprofen.
Well, I'd much rather have you give me a massage than ibuprofen.
Yeah.
You need to work on that, buddy.
I'm sorry?
Flabbergasted. No, it's I'm just joking.
Okay.
It's okay. Jesus.
Saudi Arabia is making another step in the right direction. They now have a proposal to make sexual harassment a crime.
Yay?
Yeah, I know it's like good for you guys, but also like
fuck.
Come on.
Come on, dude.
Yeah, like should already be there.
It's like,
you know what? Anything that finally just puts it on the books, that's good. That's great.
Now to give them a little bit of credit, and this is completely tongue-in-cheek in case anybody is concerned about what I'm about to say. Yeah, it's 2017, but for them, it's only like 1430.
Yeah.
On their calendar.
I was part about this. I was reading the quotes from the clerics in this article. I was like, I cannot believe I'm bringing a daughter into it. I know they're way like, across the world. I'm bringing a daughter into a world where this is like people who truly believe, saying things like rape is always the fault of the woman.
Yeah.
That there are people who still believe that always the fault of the woman.
Yep.
Sexual harassment's always the fault of the woman. They should have been wearing perfume.
They're the ones that are running the countries.
Yeah. So what one particular cleric said, a woman who leaves her house wearing makeup and perfume is an adulteress. A good woman who's wearing a kitchen apron will never leave her house looking like that. Don't blame men. I swear to God, women are the cause of harassment and adultery. Look at the women in this video, or the woman in this video. She's the one who stopped the man driving the vehicle, and she's the one that got into the car with him. That sounds like
was this a taxi?
She was in trouble and hitchhiking because she was in trouble and and stranded in fucking Saudi Arabia. That's the desert.
Yeah.
It's a hot, terrible, miserable place.
Yeah, how dare that woman not just die instead? Or do you find it? I read this one to Robert before I came over.
Yeah.
And I was like,
hold on, I gotta share this with you.
I was like, I cannot believe. I was just like I think I was visibly upset. He's like, what are you reading? And I'm like, I can't have a daughter. I know it's too late, but I can't do it. But I read it to him, and I read that quote, and there's a couple other like it, and I'm like, do you find that insulting? Like, as a man, that there are people out there who think that you are just gonna go out and like rape people willy nilly, like you can't stop yourself, like that, like that's crazy. Absolutely, it's crazy to think that it's the victim's fault, and it's insulting to say that an entire gender, an entire group, half of the population just can't control themselves.
Yeah.
No, that's not how it works. Like, it's messed up.
Yeah, no, I had a lot of problems before we found out the gender of the bebe. It was, okay, I really want a girl because I want to raise a strong female independent woman. I thought that was awesome. What if we have a boy? I'm like, I don't want to raise like future sexual harassment. Boys are gross. Boys do gross things. And one of I just realized that it's been so ingrained into me that men are inherently like untrustworthy, that I don't even know if I could raise one very well. that's when I realized that we have a serious problem in our society.
Yeah. Whereas my thought was, if we have had a girl, which we are having a girl, I will raise her to be an awesome, powerful, empowered feminist. And if we had a boy, I would raise him to be a awesome feminist.
Yeah.
Awesome, independent, powerful feminist. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just in the early stages of pregnancy, it's just, I could not wrap my mind around raising a boy because they're the enemy. And I'm like, oh my God, why am I thinking that?
And yet you married one.
I know.
It is hard, like with all of this stuff with like the Harvey Weinstein thing, which I found particularly upsetting because I'm pregnant with a girl. And also I read the New York Times story, which as I was reading it, I was like, I should stop reading this. And then I finished it. But I thought that like every few sentences, I was like, I shouldn't be reading this. It's just upsetting. But it's really got me thinking the last couple of weeks, like with this stuff coming out. I'm like, how do you raise so many of the things that we believe about gender and sex and all of that are so ingrained in us that we don't realize that that's what's causing people like him to be the way he is. It's a societal problem, but it's really hard to see all of the little things that build up to that.
Yeah. And like you can raise your child. Raise women to, if they want to join the workplace, they can. They're going to have to, they're going to have to make it. And when you go into an industry that you can only make it if you sleep with higher ups, then to not do what you need to do to get the next job, you have to go home as a failure. And it's like, I wonder how much of that pressure keeps these girls in the industry that is so toxic to them, because they grow up and they want to be an actress. It's like, okay, that's great. But it's generally assumed that you have to sleep your way to the top when it comes to Hollywood, sometimes politics. If you want to be a model, it's like you have to balance this desire to be a strong, independent woman who has to make these horrible physical sacrifices to get there. It's like, oh man, it's such a conundrum.
Well, and even if you don't, you still have to work. You still have to manage working really anywhere, but with that kind of harassment. Even if you don't have to sleep your way to the top, it's like constantly managing your atmosphere.
A waitress, if you get your butt slapped, but you get bigger tips, and so you can survive better. It's like, where do you draw the line?
Yeah,
I don't know, because I've been a little harassed in my life, just enough to be able to use the hashtag Me Too, but not like most women that I know. Maybe it was because I was such a tomboy. Maybe it was because I generally hung out with guys who were decent. But I never had the problems that I know, like my older sister did. She's the attractive one, the kind of quote unquote attractive one. But she's, just in her corporate life, she has to wear scarves so that men aren't constantly staring at her chest. And it's like, but that's the sacrifice you make if you want to be able to work. God, guys don't even have a concept of that.
Now that the Me Too is quieting down, it's made me do some reflecting and reassessing some of the things I've done in my life, and I've been part of the problem. Fortunately, it was when I was younger and I was stupid and ignorant. I didn't know better. And that's not an excuse. I've had access to the internet since I was 14. There is no excuse to not know better.
Yeah. Well, with all of this coming out and the Me Too thing, and actually I had like this sort of mini revelation in my own life, like in the comedy community, where somebody brought to my attention a group, like several men who have been accused by several women of things ranging from inappropriate touching all the way up to like violent rape. And I had no clue. And so it's something so it's been on my mind a lot. And I asked Robert, I was like, so where do you say this person made mistakes? They've realized that their behavior was inappropriate. They made personal adjustments. And so we can move on, forgive that person. Now they're a trustworthy person. And what behavior is it that's like unforgivable? They've done it. I no longer am going to work with or around this person. where's my line in that? Like, if somebody has come out and been like, I acted inappropriately in the past, I apologize, I want to be better, I'm trying to readjust my way of thinking and the way I think about women, like, what kind of behaviors can you let go and then build trust with that person again? Are there any behaviors, like when it comes to these sexual based crimes that range from harassment to rape? It's a lot more complicated than it's being portrayed right now. Cause I think there's a lot of, they did this, cut them out, they're done mentality, which I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And then somebody stands up and is like, I made a mistake, I apologize. And I'm like, well, that also kind of makes sense too.
That is worth a lot. Most of the guys that I know who's responded to this on Facebook were those guys where they said, I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. I see it now, and I've made adjustments in my life over the past several years that I think have made me a better person, or maybe it's something that I just need to become more aware of. And I'm like, kudos to you for standing up and admitting that being part of the problem is being part of the problem. But then there's some people who may say that, but continue to do their, I think it comes down to how violent was the person. I mean, there's one thing if a guy hits on you at the bar, and another thing if the guy takes you in the back of the alley and rapes you.
Yeah, and those are the two extremes. So those we can say, okay.
And then there's like in the comedian,
but it's those middle things that are trickier,
where it is the kind of like the somewhat harmless harassment, but it's been going on for years. It's a pathological thing.
Yeah.
And some of these like big name comedians are finally getting called out for some of this stuff. And it's and that's also harder to forgive, because at that point you don't know if the person's going to ever change if they've been doing it their whole lives. When
they get to a certain position, like a certain amount of like prestige and power, and they're still doing those things, you're like, that person is probably the way that they are. Like they've abused that. So when it's, for me, like when I learned about this stuff and it was on a more local level, some of these people had been years. It had been years and years. And some people, I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know.
It's a personal decision.
Yeah.
It's something that you have to do one-on-one with the people that you deal with. There are so many people that have done so many bad things that you are going to run into defending people that maybe you normally wouldn't, because you were ignorant. But there's also there's a lot of healing in forgiveness too. So I don't know. I think it's just, you have to do it on your own, and you can't let people on Facebook bully you into liking or not liking somebody.
Well, and if they admit they've made mistakes and everybody is okay with giving them another chance, then it needs to be, you have one last chance.
The hard part is getting everybody. There's always going to be one person who'd be like, nope, never. Those people I have a hard time with, but
yeah.
There's a reason why typically or historically, if stuff like this has happened, if you make even if you make changes and try to do better, you quit whatever you're doing, you move to a new town, and you start over, because it's easier to start at zero and build your way up than to start at minus 500.
Yeah.
And try to get back to zero. And no matter what, these people need to be starting at minus 500. If they're not absolutely living up to the promises they've made of doing better, they should be done.
Yeah.
And whether or not they're even given that chance shouldn't be automatic.
Yeah, it's just the trying to figure out a way to call these people out without it negatively affecting your own personal life through either lawsuits or revenge firings or, stuff like that. That's why this stuff has been quiet for so long.
Or the approaching past victims, like that, and intimidating, threatening. So I think where I feel most like about these people that I've known for a long time, known for years, since I've been doing comedy, and then finding this stuff out, I'm like, how did nobody else tell me about this?
Why did nobody
not
say
even
anything?
In passing, not even a hey, like maybe don't get a ride home with that person, because more people have to know about this stuff going on. And
but if that person has any sort of power, then it takes a special person to stand up and say, I'm willing to risk not being booked to call out this booker for sexual harassment, because you're putting your livelihood on the line.
And even if they're not in a position of power, it's still uncomfortable to do. Like, even hear what I'm like talking about. I'm like only kind of talking about it because I'm like, it's uncomfortable to. It's
hard to name names, and it's hard to
and to say this is what actually happened and this is how I'm going to respond to it. It's hard to do, too. So
right, well, because like if you refuse to participate in any events that these guys are a part of, if not everybody is agreeing to that same approach, it hurts you, not them.
Yeah,
that sucks.
And I did, like, I have put some thought into it, and about what now that I know after years of not having any idea what I will do. And that was ultimately my decision. As I was like, the thing that I'm not most upset, but the thing that I'm really upset about is that nobody said anything to me. Nobody warned me about these unsafe situations. So it's a lot easier for me to say, when I get booked in the future, to say who's on the show. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't do that show because I'm not making a living off of this. You know what I mean? I make money here and there. But ultimately that is what I've decided I have to do, because nobody was doing it before I knew. Nobody was doing it to me, letting me know that this was a problem. So
I mean, the best you can do is like a secret female-only comic Facebook group or something.
I thought about that, about like starting something for just like female comics in the Northwest to be like, watch out for this guy, watch out for this booker. I've had problems with this person in the past. Because apparently it's, I mean, I'd always heard like people say, it's hard to be a woman in comedy and stuff. And I'd never seen it. And, but now that I see such a widespread problem between the Me Too thing and so much of it being female comics having problems while doing comedy, and this sort of enlightening conversation I had about these local men who are predators, is like, we shouldn't have to have it, but maybe there should be a group for women who are
just protection, just that little
so
extra bit of knowledge.
If nothing else, if you tell Lady Business, Sophie, and
Mikey,
Mikey
will dox the hell out of him.
Yeah, he will.
Yeah. That is the nice, like, the thing I can fall back on is I do know there are a lot of really, really good people in that community.
Good people here.
Yeah. So I do get to lean on that quite a bit. But it's so upsetting when you find out bad stuff about
especially
people.
If you're like somewhat friends with somebody.
Yeah, some
got along with people.
Good friends. Like I said, gotten rides home from these people.
Yeah.
Like, just they've been to my house, and it's a bummer. It's been a bummer of a couple weeks when it comes to that kind of stuff between like the national and the local.
Yeah. But it's gotten the conversation started.
It has, and which is good. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. Like I said, it's uncomfortable, but hopefully it helps to like really talk about it. And
one of my guy friends on Facebook, he's like, it didn't hit me until my mom posted Me Too. He's like, my mom. Somebody did that to my mom. Unforgivable. He's like, it was like rage. It would be like finding out if your daughter posted that. It's different when it's your friends or some random acquaintance, but when somebody in your family's been affected by this, it's like then it's more real,
closer, yeah.
And it's if we have to start doxing people, I say go for it. There's always threats of lawsuits, but mostly those are empty-winded threats.
Lawsuits with people in comedy in particular.
Well, just people. But
there's in that area, local at least, they're going to sue for what money?
Yeah, what are they going to take from me? I don't have anything.
Your firstborn. No. Yeah, it's true. You can't sue somebody who has no money.
It's like you look at podcasts
libel
and how many podcasts call people out for shit? Very, very few have gotten sued for good reason. There is nothing to gain from it.
It just draws attention to it too. Then more people become aware of what they said about you to start with. And
like one case where it did actually happen, a quack in Texas sued the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, named Steve Novella directly.
I remember that.
And included his employer, Harvard University Medical Center, in the law as a named defendant in the suit. And not only did Brzezinski lose, I think the case was actually just flat out dismissed. He's getting countersued, and it has resulted in getting a pretty major legislative push to get slap suits removed. If you've got legitimate grounds to complain against somebody, you should, and not be afraid. All right, we are out of time. Mary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's
fun.
Do you have anything to plug?
Yes, I'm doing the Caffeinated Mormon show at Liquid November 12th. You can look it up on Facebook. I believe it stores at 7, shows at 8.
Awesome.
But it's going to be an awesome show. It's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, so if you're in Boise, Liquid Laughs, check it out.
Especially if you're Mormon or ex-Mormon.
Yeah. Or you know them.
Or you like laughing at Mormons.
Or you like laughing at Mormons.
If you're
or
in
you
Boise,
like laughing. It's going to be a lot of universal
comedy
stuff.
So basically, if you're in Boise, show up.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Alrighty. All that remains is to remind you, not all those who wander are lost. Thank you for listening to another episode of Atheist Nomads. You can find show notes and contact information at atheistnomads.com. Follow us on Twitter at Atheist Nomads, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Atheist Nomads. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcatcher of choice, and while you're there, feel free to leave us a review. Theme music is courtesy of Sturdy Fred. Until next time, this has been the Atheist Nomads.